Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast, and welcome to 2017!
Happy New Year!
Woohoo! We are so excited to start off this year's series of podcasts with Tom Corson-Knowles. He is in the self-publishing realm and had actually an incredible perspective on growth and transformation and some really wonderful pieces of wisdom. So we thought we would start out the year with his wonderful interview. Please stay tuned. In the after show, we'll talk a little bit more about what we have coming up in 2017. And anything else to say, Blake? Want to give some wishes for the new year?
Yes. I want to give R. Kelly style wishes. Well, I mainly thought of that because he had a song called I Wish, and then I remembered it was R. Kelly. So maybe I don't want to give you any R. Kelly related wishes. I just want to say that this is your year, new you.
Woo!
You own it.
Own it!
You ride that pony.
Was that R. Kelly too?
Nope, that's Genuine. I'm just being genuine with y'all. Okay,
Wonderful.
Anyone else I want to bring up? No, I think we're good. No more weird R&B references need to be made right now.
Thank you all for loving us.
Thank you. All I can really say is cotton candy sweet and go. Let's listen to Tom Corson-Knowles.
Okay. Let's go. Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Tom Corson-Knowles. Tom is the international best-selling author of the Kindle Publishing Bible and 26 other books. Tom is also the founder of ebookpublishingschool.com, a free self-publishing training course for authors, and TCK Publishing, an independent book publisher that specializes in publishing and marketing ebooks, print books, and audiobooks online. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, we'd love to hear more about what you're up to and what you love about it.
Yes. So, today I'm an author and I teach other people how to write, publish, and market their books. And I also run the publishing company, TCK Publishing. And so every day I'm working with our clients on, their book ideas and their brand and their platform and their audience, and then publishing and marketing their work. It's so much fun.
What do you enjoy most about helping other people achieve their dreams through publishing?
There's a lot. Part of the aspect that I love is helping people find work that's meaningful for them, because a lot of my clients, they started out working jobs they hated, right? And writing was their passion, and they never found a way to make money from it. And so they were always kind of had this struggle in their life, like I had when I was younger, where they end up doing work for money that they don't enjoy, but they have this passion, they have this dream that they just want to write. They want to be a writer. They want to do that full time. It's just what they love to do. And so to be able to help them make that change in their life where they can actually focus their entire life and organize their entire life around what they love to do versus around what they have to do to put food on the table. For me, I just love that aspect of it. It's really helping people become their true selves, right? Because they get to live the life that they actually want to live rather than, being stuck as just a dreamer with a dream, but not actually making it happen,
And how did writing come into your life? Was there a teacher, or did you enjoy reading growing up?
Yeah, so I loved reading since I was a young kid. I remember I was 6, 7, 8 years old reading The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
There's 1,000-page, huge novels. And I just love that stuff. So I've always liked reading. And then I know when I was 12 or 13, I opened up a word processor document on my computer and just started writing poetry out of nowhere. I didn't know anyone who wrote poetry. I'd never really read it. The only poet I'd ever read was Robert Frost. And I only liked one of his poems, the Two Roads Diverge. It's the only poem I liked for his. But I started writing my own poetry, and actually eventually got published in a teen ink magazine. And but that's kind of just how it started. It was just very natural for me to different points in my life of growing up to reflect and to read and to write. But I never really saw it as like a possible career at all until I was like 20, when I had actually already written a book, but I didn't know it was a book yet. And someone was like, hey, this is so good. Like you should turn this into a book and get it published. That's when like the first time I had this idea that, I actually could become an author.
What was it like to have that shift in what was possible for you?
The shift, it was very gradual, right? I mean, it happened in that conversation, but it took me a long time, right? I think it's how a lot of things have happened in my life. I made the shift like a year before, and then it took me like a couple of years to catch up and figure out, I've already changed my mindset. It kind of takes that mindset shift from, for me personally was, okay, I have this document on my computer, to, okay, this could become a book, to, okay, this is a book, to, okay, I'm going to get this book published, right? And that shift took a lot of time, right? Which is silly, because if you look at it from like an outside perspective, like that's just obvious that it was a book, that it could be published, that it could make money. But for me personally, from the inside of my life and my mindset, it took me quite a while to adjust to that. But once I did adjust to that, then it became kind of this adventure of, okay, well, how do I get my book published? And it was not a very fun adventure. I mean, it took me 6 years. It was like banging my head against the wall trying to get a traditional book deal and just failing miserably. Couldn't get agents to respond to phone calls or emails or letters until I finally, had another conversation with someone who's like, hey, why don't we just self-publish this on Kindle? And that for me was like that instant change, like instant light bulb moment. Wow, I could do that. I didn't even know it was possible before that conversation. And so then I was just so inspired. I researched everything I could possibly find on how to actually, upload my book to Amazon and sell it on Kindle. And I did that. And like that first month I had 11 sales. And that's when I knew like this is going to be huge, because I didn't tell anyone I had published my book, right? I was so embarrassed I had self-published. I didn't tell a soul what I had done. Not a friend, not a family member, no one. And so I realized, look, if I can sell 11 books without telling anyone what I'd done, imagine what I could do if I treated this like a real business. And that's why after that point, I was waking up every day at 5:30 a.m. to write my next book. I couldn't wait to get up to write my next book, to get it published, to build my audience, to build my platform. So, it's definitely one of those things in life that it takes a long time. It took me a long time for my mindset to finally shift, for the right opportunities to come around. But when that right opportunity came around for me, I ran at it full force.
Considering how many authors you've worked with, what mindsets do you see those authors having that are holding them back?
That's a great question. So when I talk about mindsets, I like to think about mindfulness, right? So Michael Singer has got a great book called The Untethered Soul. He's also got an amazing YouTube video we can link in the show notes that is awesome.
Yes,
on mindfulness training.
We're fans.
Yeah.
We're fans.
Yeah. And so what I like about what his training specifically is that it's all about understanding that that voice inside your head is not you. And so pretty much any mindset is linked to that, right? Mm-hmm. So any kind of mindset you have that's disempowering, that's holding you back, any kind of barrier you have to achieving something that millions of other people have achieved before you, like writing and publishing a book, which millions of people have done, right? So the only reason you haven't done that yet, if it's something you want to do, is because there's something going on in your mind stopping you from doing it, right? So there's that voice telling you can't do it, you're not good enough, who are you to write a book, right? Whatever it is for you. And so there's all kinds of different common themes that stop people, right? Common, what do you call mindsets? But it really all boils down to, people who believe more in that voice in their head than they believe in what they actually want to do. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like the most simple reason, but also the most challenging to actually execute and live by, I think. It takes a lot of practice.
Yeah. So one of the ways I love, even before I learned about mindfulness training from Michael Singer, that's really helped me before and still today to get over those kind of mindsets that are holding me back, is to take a look at it from someone else's perspective. Right. So that fascinating study, I found that we actually give better advice to our friends than we give to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think part of that is because we're so biased with our own life. Like we're so emotionally attached to stuff. Like we have all these attachments to the way things have to go or should go or whatever, that it stops us from making good decisions. And so what I found is that if I can look at my life through someone else's viewpoint, even if it's just imaginary in my head, I can get a much better perspective on it and a much better idea of what actually is the best next step to take. So for example, let's say I want to write a book and get it published, and I've never done it before, and I'm scared, and I think, it's going to take 10 years to do, and I'll never get it done, and it's not worth the effort. That can be all the stuff going on in your mind, And so to question that, you can look at this from someone else's perspective and say, okay, well, let me go find someone who's a successful author, right? So let's go, talk to J.K. Rowling in our minds, right? And we can ask J.K., like, was it worth it? All that work you went in to write your book, was it worth it? Why did you do that? You can ask all these questions in your mind to figure out, okay, from this person's perspective, would it make sense for me to do this in my life? I found that just kind of getting disconnected, having that different viewpoint from it, helps you make much less biased decisions. Because, the truth is, pretty much anything you want to do in life, there's probably millions of other people who have already done that, right? So it's totally possible for you to do it too. It's just overcoming those mental blocks and then finding, the right path to take. And that really is all about just taking the next step. Because for example, like publishing a book, there's like 100 plus steps to take, right? But it doesn't really matter what step 96 is if you don't take the first step. Right? It's totally irrelevant. It's like you're in a car, driving from New York to LA at night, and you can only see 200 feet in front of you with your headlights, right? What are you going to do? Stop and not drive all the way because you can't see all the way to the end? You don't know what the 96th turn is? It doesn't matter. If you just keep going 200 feet at a time, you'll eventually get there as long as you have the roadmap, you're going in the right direction. And I think it's the same way in life. If you want to be successful and achieve big things, all you have to do is focus on the next 200 feet. What is that next step to take? And then just make sure you're going in the right direction. And if you ever find a point in your life where you're going the wrong way, you made a wrong turn, just turn around and go a different way. It's not a big deal. Like, everyone makes mistakes, And
that's a great reminder that there are many people who have done most of the things we want to do before, and that we don't have to choose the hardest path to do it, right? Like, there's a highway and there are a bunch of back roads. And if you really want to take the scenic route for whatever reason to go to LA, you can, go down all the windy back roads, or you can hop on a highway, which is what I really appreciate about the work you're doing with ebook publishing school, because, you are saying, here's a system that will set you up for success, so you don't have to figure out or guess every single turn on this road.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I created it, and that's why one of my passions in life is learning. I just love to learn new information, right? And so, it took me 6 years to get my book not traditionally published, right? 6 years of banging my head against the wall, not getting anything done. And so when I finally figured out how to get my book published, and it went from 0 to 12,000 a month in 10 months, I was so grateful and so excited about what I had learned. I just couldn't help but share with other people. And so I started creating YouTube videos and then courses, and, a publishing company came out of that. So I think that's one of the greatest gifts in life, is that once you find that path that works, it's sharing it with other people. And I think that's why the internet is so amazing, because it gives you the opportunity to share whatever impactful knowledge, that important knowledge you found with other people. And I just think that's, for me, that gives my life a lot of purpose and meaning.
So this is a bit of an aside question, but there are a couple things that you have said. You mentioned the metaphor that you used about driving and being able to see only 200 feet ahead of you, and then also your Skype tagline being, "I love my life." Both of these are reminding me of Mary Morrissey. Have you ever listened to Mary Morrissey? Do you know who this is?
No, I don't. But headlight metaphor, I learned that from Jack Canfield. And then I love my life. I got that from a Peak Potential seminar. So I'm guessing they probably learned from her, something like that. That's the great thing about ideas, is that people just share them and they go around, right? And good ideas make their way around.
It's great. She probably learned from Jack Canfield, let's be honest. But she has a whole program called Prosperity Plus. And so I'm feeling really energized listening to you talk so far, because you have such amazing, great ideas, and all of these wisdom teachers that I've experienced so far. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. So, Tom, what is the biggest dream you've achieved so far, and in what ways did you have to grow to achieve it?
I don't know. It's hard, because the thing I've learned is that you have a dream, and then once you achieve it or some version of it, then you kind of go on to a new dream. right? It's kind of I'm part of a couple high-end mastermind groups for entrepreneurs, and one of the common things we talk about is how, once you achieve a big goal, it's you have to set another new goal, right? You have to have something else driving you forward in life. And so what ends up happening is you kind of get this gap that's created where you constantly feel like you haven't made it yet, because you're constantly striving for a new goal. So I found that's been one of the challenges of actually achieving my dream. So I know that's not your question, but I think that's important to realize, is that you're always going to have a dream. You're always going to have a goal. You're always going to have something driving you forward in life. And so I think the important thing isn't so much in the end result, right? It's not about how much money you make or whatever best-selling author achievements you get or accolades or whatever. For me, it's really about the journey. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but for me, it's not like, I don't even like that word because it's so cliche. It's like, for me, I feel like it's about the process, right? It's about who you become in the process. Jim Rohn talks about, set a goal to become a millionaire. Why? Because of what it will make of you to achieve that goal. Because of who you will become when you achieve that goal, you'll become a better person. Set a goal to have a great marriage and raise great children. Why? Because who you'll become in that process will make you a better person. And so that's what I try to focus on whenever I'm talking about dreams or goals or things like that. It's not so much about, making it and making the $1 million or whatever results. For me, I really just like to focus on, what am I doing and who am I becoming in the process? I think that's what's really important because, it took me, like 7 or 8 years from the time I set my first goal to make $10,000 a month to the time I actually hit it. And so like every year I was setting the same goal. I'm going to make $10,000 a month doing what I love, passive income, right? And then the year would go by. Next year I'd be like, I'm not much closer to this goal, so I'm going to set that goal again. I did it for like 7 or 8 years until I finally hit it. That would have been a really frustrating, depressing, horrible experience for me if I hadn't been focused on all the personal growth I went through during that time. Because even though, 5 years in, I wasn't earning my $10,000 a month goal, I was still earning a couple thousand a month passive income, and I was still growing so much as a person, right? So much as a human being. I was a better person. I was a better communicator. I had better relationships. I was happier with my life. And so I think that's one of the great gifts of having a dream and having a goal. It's not so much in the achieving it, but it's in the process that you go through in order to achieve it, and the way that it helps improve your life and in every area of your life. I think that's an important thing about goals and dreams too, is that when you set a goal to make a lot of money, if you go through that process in a very conscious way, like being mindful, it will also help you improve your relationships. It will also help you improve your health if you're mindful. If you're only focused on the goal and only focused on the dream and ignore other important aspects of your life, then it will actually drive you in the wrong direction. And of course, we all know examples of people like that who, chased the money and then ended up having, horrible health and horrible relationships and so forth. And so, yeah, I know it's a really long-winded answer, but that's kind of my thoughts on dreams and goals, is that it's really about the process, not so much the end result.
And how did you change as a person? You mentioned you became a better person over those years of trying to hit that $10,000 a month goal. Is there an example or a couple of things that come to mind?
So much. So sales. So my first business was in sales. My first quote unquote successful business was in sales. In direct marketing, network marketing. And so that got me into like personal development. So it was the first time I started reading personal development books, which I love. I've read thousands since then. So personal development was a big gift for me. The other thing about selling is that it forces you to communicate with people. And so I was really, really shy, right? And so it helped me overcome my shyness. So I went from being that guy who, if I was in a room with people I didn't know, would just like sit in a corner and not talk to anyone, to being someone who's like totally confident to go in a room and be able to talk to anyone wherever. And that was, a huge shift for me to overcome my shyness. And then also relationships. So in sales, what I learned is that, making a sale for someone, making a good sale is all about solving someone's problem. In order to solve someone's problem, you have to understand what their problem is. And in order to understand what someone's problem is, you have to listen to them. And when you listen to someone, you get to know them, which sounds obvious, but my experience was that when I was really shy, I was not good at listening to people. And I was not good at building relationships because I didn't care about anyone, because I wasn't going through the process of listening, right? And there's a difference between like hearing someone and actually listening to them, right? Listening to what their wants are, what their needs are, asking them questions, right? Most people in conversation, they're just going to blab on about themselves. And I know if you ever had a conversation with someone where like you talk to them for half an hour or 10 minutes or an hour and like you can't say anything because they're just constantly talking, that's not a fun, fulfilling conversation, right? And so what I learned is like the art of listening to people and the art of asking good questions. And so those are just the few things I learned in my first, 2 or 3 years, like before I even hit my goal. But those were, transformational. Those are skills I still use every day in my life that have changed my relationships in every area of life, and business and personal and family and so on.
What you're speaking to is really the heart of the work that we are doing. And this is something that we've had to learn too. I think that when we started Motivational Millennial, we were really focused on the dream and fulfillment, and then began to really understand And particularly for me, it solidified when I started doing coach certification, like really understanding that the heart of achieving any of your dreams is going through transformation and change. Like you will have to change who you are. And because I've seen that in myself, I've seen that in Blake as we've started on this entrepreneurial journey. It's like we have had to become different people in order to serve this dream. And so what you're saying really resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jim Rohn says like you can't get a different result in life unless you change who you are and change what you do. It's so obvious and so basic as a concept, but the problem is it's really scary when you go through that process, right? Because it's like, you know, a year into your entrepreneurial journey or whatever time period, you know, you're into it. Like you look back on who you were when you started and you're like, I don't even recognize that person anymore. Like your old self has literally like died. There's this really interesting mythology in the Native Americans from Peru and South America. And they talk about this concept of like going to meet death. Which is kind of like while you're living, your old self kind of dies, like your old self concept, the old self who you thought you were dies and you become someone different. So yeah, I mean, you're still Tom, you're still Ivy, right? You're still the same person, but you see the world differently. You act differently in the world. You feel differently about the world. You feel differently about your place in the world. And so that's a really scary process for a lot of people. And I think, you know, you definitely need like support around you. Like you need, you know, employees or team members or partners or mastermind groups, or you need some kind of support group around you to help you go through that change. Because otherwise, you know, if you're just sitting in your office all by yourself, you know, it's really hard to recognize the change and to accept the change because it can feel so alienating in a lot of ways.
How have your mastermind groups helped you with your own growth as a business person and as a human?
So my favorite mastermind group I'm a part of is like high-level entrepreneurs, but it's not just about business. So it's probably like 30% business, 30% personal life, 30%, well, I guess 60% personal life, right? Like relationships, fun, hobbies, passions, right? Stuff outside of work. And I love it because that's real. The people in the group are people who are committed to being successful financially, but they're also committed to having good health and good relationships and good friendships and doing work that's fulfilling and making the world a better place, right? So that we all share similar values. And I think that's really important for me because unfortunately those values aren't shared by everyone, right? And I don't know if unfortunately is the right word, but like, you know, if I was just hanging around the same people I was friends with in high school or in college, they have very different values. And what I found is that it's very hard to be true to yourself and be true to your core values if you're not surrounded by people who are also true to those same values, who can constantly give you feedback and also provide examples for you on how to do things, if that makes sense. For example, like if you're around, you know, business people who think it's okay to lie and say anything they can to make a sale and to cheat people and whatever, like you're much more likely to do that. I mean, scientific research has shown time and time again, you're more likely to do things when the people you associate with do those things, and even if those things are illegal or unethical and so forth. And so I think that's one of the gifts of being in a group like that, is that every day you get to see examples of people doing the right thing in the right way. And so it just constantly reinforces in your life that, yes, these are my values. This is how I'm going to do things. And so when I'm thinking about problems in my own life, you know, difficult situations where I might be, you know, tempted to take, you know, a shortcut, and I can look at these people and say, oh, well, you know, this is how Ben did it. And so I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to do something the right way. And I think that has been a huge gift, is just to be surrounded by people who are doing the right thing the right way, because it just constantly reminds you of this is how to live. This is how to do things well. And not just to take shortcuts and not to do what's easy, but to do what's difficult if it's the right thing to do.
Would you share with us a story of the most significant challenge that you have faced so far and what it was like for you to overcome that challenge?
I mean, I've got so many, but one that's been big for me recently is like anger. So like irritability. So, you know, like I find myself just getting angry at like my partner for like random thing. You know, like recycling's on the table and she didn't put it in the recycling bin, or like just like littlest things, and I would get like upset and I get irritable, and so, you know, that mindfulness training with Michael Singer helped a ton with that. I've gone through a lot of work on this, and what I found is that you can't really control your emotional response to things. Like there's this great book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he talks about like there's kind of like two parts of your brain. So one is like this emotional instant response. And the other one is like your logical, slower, more methodical, thoughtful response. And so when an event happens in life, you have like your instant response, right? So like if someone, like there's a huge loud noise, like instinctually you're just going to respond to that. You're going to like yell or, swear or like turn around and look at it, right? You're going to have an instant response. And then the slower thinking part of your brain is going to kick in and you're going to think about that, right? And so what I noticed was that I was constantly having like this quick emotional response where I would get angry. And then like 5 seconds later, I'd realize like that was stupid. Like, why am I getting angry? That's not a big deal. And so I haven't really solved the problem yet completely. I'm not sure if I ever will, but I think what I've come to understand is that it's okay to be angry. Like it's okay to be irritable. It's okay to be pissed off, even at something small and not a big deal. But it's not okay for me to take it out on other people, right? It's not okay for me to be mean to other people. And so, having that awareness of this whole situation and how it works and my response to events in life has helped me be kinder to the people around me, but also to be kinder to myself, where I'm not beating myself up for getting angry. Because sometimes stuff happens and you're going to get angry, right? Like there's nothing you can really do about it. Like I don't know anyone who's like ever like not angry, like permanently.
Yeah, there's a great description that I love. That's primary emotions and secondary emotions, So the primary emotions are the thing you feel, and then secondary emotions the way you feel about the thing you feel. So exactly, like I feel guilty about being angry. And that's when you really start to get into the spiral sometimes. And also, I love what you're saying, because I think one of the things that's helped me a lot along the way is installing, I think of it as a buffer, but it's probably more accurate to call it like a mental tape delay. So in a big live televised event, sometimes they have a 5-second to 10-second tape delay, meaning that if something were to go very wrong or inappropriately, they could, pause the tape or, not air that specific part of it. And I think one of the things I noticed later on, I never really knew how to describe it until I was older, but I would feel exactly what you're saying. I would feel the anger or the instinctual response, and then I would have like a 6-second lag time before I would allow myself to respond. And it helped so much, because the times when I would ignore that buffer were always the times when I said stuff I really regretted.
Right.
So I think that's great that you're highlighting the initial emotion and then the ability to respond after that. And as you're thinking about some of these experiences you've been through and both the challenges, but also some of the accomplishments, what of your accomplishments have surprised you the most when you look back at them?
I don't know. It's like kind of a hard question, because like today, like I'm not surprised by the way my life is currently. Mm-hmm. So I have to look back from my younger self. Like, I'm pretty shocked that I run a publishing company. like I never planned for it at all. So, the way it evolved was I wrote my first book. I published it. I did well. People started asking me for advice. I started sharing, and then I created some YouTube videos, and then I created a video training course. And then out of that, a lot of my students who went to the video training course said, "Hey, Tom, like I love what you're doing, but can you do the editing and cover design and SEO and the marketing and distribution and retail and promotion for my books?" And so I was like, well, it sounds like a publishing company. So I just tested out with like a few of my clients to see if what I'd done with my own books would work for them. And it worked really well. So I decided like, okay, let's start this. Let's have this be a real business. But I had never imagined, like I never planned to do it. And there was no business plan. There was no committee. There was no, right? It was just listening to my audience and what they wanted and being like, okay, well, 5 people emailed me asking for this, so I guess I might as well try it out.
Nice. That's the ideal way to create a business, I think, because your customers are saying, here's what we want.
Exactly, right? But the funny thing is, it's also been like my most successful and fulfilling business. And it started in a way that none of my other businesses had quite started. So now today, like it's awesome. But, if you had told me 5 years ago or that I would have started a business, 1 year later like that, I would have been like, you're crazy. There's no way I'm going to do that. So yeah, it's just really, really fascinating the way that turned out. But I think it's another great example of that skill of listening. Talked about before, listening, how important that is. So, listening to your customers, listening to what they want. So now when I get emails from customers, clients, students, whatever, even if it sounds like crazy, like I get some crazy ideas. I don't know if you guys, how big your audience is or how many emails you get, but like I get some just weird way crazy stuff. But every once in a while, something that initially sounds to me like a crazy idea is actually like a really good idea. And a lot of ideas I get are just great ideas all around. So I think it's important though, because sometimes people send me like an email, which is like 8 paragraphs. Like it takes like 10 minutes to read it and 10 minutes to understand what they're saying. Right? But sometimes like in there, there's like this nugget of this golden idea. And so what I've found is that, just by being open to that feedback is really important. Because, I live in Hawaii. I work from my home office. I don't do seminars very often. So I'm not like, face to face with my customers very often. And so for me, I found it's really important to listen to their emails, to listen to what they're saying, what they're asking for, because that helps me understand them better and then provide better service and better value to them in return.
But what advice would you like to give to other millennials who are also on this path of fulfillment and success?
Yeah, definitely go through mindfulness training. That should be like something you do every single day for the rest of your life, because everything starts with awareness. You can look at that, like everything in your life starts with awareness. So if you want to make $10,000 a month or become an author, whatever, like that all starts with the awareness of the idea and then the awareness of your current situation, right? Being aware that there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And then being aware that there is this opportunity for you because other people have done it before. So then there must be a way for you to do it too, right? So then you have to become aware of, what is the next step you take? What can you do right now to move towards that goal? And every day you have to constantly repeat that process, like being aware of where you are and where you want to go and being aware of what you can do right now to improve your chances of achieving your goal. Like that's how you achieve huge things in life. And so I think without that awareness, most people will just keep doing what they've always done. People who go to work every Monday and hate their jobs and hate their career and hate their lives, and they have ideas for other things they could do, but they're not aware enough about their life to be present enough with their real dreams to really figure out what they want to do and actually take action towards it, if that makes sense.
It does. And the other piece of mindfulness, in addition to awareness, is non-judgment. So having the ability to be aware of the emotions, of your desires, what you're really feeling, and then practicing not judging whatever that happens to be. So what ways have you practiced non-judgment when you have awareness of something that maybe on the surface might not be the most pleasant thing for you?
So definitely with like clients, because I've had some clients that like triggered something in me emotionally, right? Like maybe they were writing about something I didn't agree with or whatever, right? And so, I've responded to a couple of people sometimes before where I was like too quick to respond, saying like, yeah, we're not going to publish that. It's not a good fit for us, right? And the reason wasn't because I didn't have enough information about what they were actually working on, right? But I just made this like snap second, like emotional decision. And so I made my response based on that. And so I've learned to be non-judgmental about that and to take more time to reflect and to try to get to know them a little bit better and what they're working on a little bit better. So I have more information before I can actually make a reasoned decision, right? So not making decisions emotionally, I think, is important in business because we're programmed as humans to make emotional decisions, right? But I think at the same time, sometimes you have to step back and make sure you have enough information. You're never going to have all the information, right? Like no matter how much someone tells you about, the project they're working on or whatever, you're never really going to know if it's a good fit until you do it, no matter how much information you have. But you can make better decisions. And so that's what I found is that I can make better decisions by kind of being non-judgmental about that and taking a step back and trying to get as much information as I can in as thorough and logical a way as possible. At the same time, being efficient so that I'm not sending like 100 emails between someone who's never going to be a good fit as a client. So making that balance between, getting enough information to make a good decision and then not reacting too quickly.
Were there any other elements of your mindfulness training that you find yourself using or remembering on a daily or semi-daily basis that really help you be the person you want to be for the world? I'm
not sure I have a good answer for that right now, but I can tell you that I see it in other people all the time, which is the opposite of being non-judgmental, right? It's like, but you can see it. Like you can see all the time in business. In my business, I can see it where people, they have their own mindset, whatever's going on in their mind, telling them like, their book has to be in retail stores or such and such has to be done. It has to be done this way. But that wasn't a logical decision they made, right? It was like an emotional mind decision that was made for them and they never question it. And so I've seen a lot of people throw away huge opportunities because they were so attached to what they thought was the right way to do things, even though it wasn't necessarily the right way to do things. So it's crazy. Like I've seen, so for example, in network marketing, the business I started back then, I still get checks every month. I get a couple $1,000s every month from the company for sales I made like 10 years ago. And there's so many people that started around the time I did that were at a similar level of success to me or even higher. And they quit. So what that means is when they quit is they literally told the company to stop sending them checks. So they stopped collecting checks every single month for the rest of their life. For the only reason was that they were like had an emotional response. They weren't thinking logically, right? And to me, that makes no sense. Why would you be like, okay, just stop sending me checks every month for the rest of my life? It's crazy, right? But I'm sure you can find examples of people in your own life who have done that, who have kind of like shot themselves in the foot, who have sabotaged their own success. Right? There's a lot of talk in like personal development world about self-sabotage. You know, and if you look at all of that, like, where does that come from? It comes from your mind. Like, that's what mindfulness training is understanding that you don't have to trust everything that voice in your head says, and you don't have to do everything that voice in your head says. So I think there's so many examples of that you can look around your own life and see, where is their self-sabotage? Where am I self-sabotaging? Where am I holding myself back from being successful? And I think that's a core value you can get from being mindful, is that you can stop it before it's too late. Mm-hmm. You know, the biggest reason people fail is because they give up, they quit. And there's never been someone who quit something when their mind didn't tell them to quit. And so your mind is constantly going to throw up, you know, roadblocks and obstacles. And it's your job to like calmly move past them. Otherwise, you're going to get tripped up and you're not going to make it. Because the journey to success is a long journey. Mm-hmm. Right? Whether it's financial success or health or good relationships, whatever, it's a long journey. And it only takes one split second to mess it all up. Mm-hmm. Right? You could be dead in a second. You know, people commit suicide all the time. You could be broke in a second. People commit financial suicide all the time. You could be divorced in a second. People commit, you know, relationship suicide all the time. And it only takes 1 second to mess it all up. And I think that's what's so important about being mindful, is that not being afraid to mess it all up, but being aware enough that you're not going to make the really bad decisions that are going to have really bad repercussions for the rest of your life, unless it's the right decision for you. I mean, sometimes, you know, it's the right thing to get a divorce or whatever for certain people. But, you know, unless you're being mindful, you're not really going to know if it's right for you or not. You're just going to be following habits and programs that are totally subconscious.
Yeah, and so much of the unhappiness, I think, that makes people want to quit is from some expectation that they have. I think you really hit on it earlier. We often have an expectation that says it has to look a certain way, or it has to proceed in a certain order. And if it doesn't, that means I'm failing at it, or I'll never be successful. And I think those unmet or unrealistic expectations are often what really cause people to quit and give up on something that's often really close. And it's interesting to hear you talk about it from your perspective in publishing, because talk about a long journey that has so many opportunities to doubt yourself and sabotage yourself and quit. I mean, being an author is such a process of resilience and just continuing to keep going. I mean, Ivy is just finishing an ebook right now, actually. We were just editing it right before we jumped on this interview with you. And even that, you know, I mean, it's not the longest thing, but it's, I mean, Ivy, you can probably speak to that a little more.
I know you started talking about that, and I'm just laughing because, yeah, it's true. I mean, from my perspective as someone who's writing, because, you know, editing is such an important process, but there is the saboteur voice coming up going like, why aren't the words coming out like just perfectly already? Like, why do they even need to be edited? You know, which I've heard other people who have been writing experience a similar thing. So that's so funny. I did start laughing there when you started mentioning that, but yes.
Yeah, Tom, when have you seen most people quit in the writing process?
Whew, man, you know, people quit at every stage. You know, most people quit before they ever begin. I mean, that's the sad truth.
Oh,
right? Like, you know, 81% of people want to write a book. 81%. Less than 10% ever actually write a book.
Wow.
You know, so most people just quit before they ever get started. You know, and I think that comes from that mindfulness, like we were talking about. You know, it's one thing to have a dream, to want something, to say you want something. Like, that's one thing, to say you want something. To actually take action towards it is totally different. But the funny thing is, like, you know, to start writing a book, anyone could literally open their phone or tablet or take a piece of paper right now and start writing their book. The process of starting to write a book can happen in 2 minutes, just writing a word on paper, writing a word on a document. The process to get started it's like taking a breath of fresh air. Like it doesn't take any special effort or thought. Well, I guess that's different because, air is like automatic. You're automatically going to breathe, right? But you know what I mean? Like it's just a simple process. There's no obstacles. There's no barriers there except the mental ones.
Yeah, and you can really revise your way to success. That's one of my big things, is having a first draft that is terrible. I believe Elizabeth Gilbert calls it something else, or maybe she was quoting somebody. But anyway, regardless, it's good to have a terrible first. Oh, Anne Lamott, that's what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Anne Lamott, there we go. There are all these great writers talking about writing, but the terrible first draft is a real thing, and it's a great thing because it takes that perfectionist pressure off that I think keeps so many people, myself included, from writing as much as we could, because it's not to write for the point of writing. It's writing because there's something that we want to share with the world that we think could help people in one way or another, either by helping them change something they want to change about their life, or looking at other people more complexly and helping develop empathy, or sharing information or knowledge like you've done, Tom. And so I really think it's important to give ourselves permission to do exactly what you just said and not put so much pressure on the blank page. I feel like that's probably why, you've got all those people who have never even started. And I'm one. I mean, I've written a couple books in the past related to some of my hip hop work, but I've really just been still mulling over an idea. And as you pointed out, you have a really prolific publishing career yourself personally, in addition to your actual publishing company. When you're writing and composing, do you have sort of, hey, I'm going to start with this idea and run with it? What's your process like when you're starting to write?
I've got a pretty detailed process now. So what I found is that the creative process is this balance between the right brain creativity and the left brain analytical thinking. And so everything starts with that right brain creativity, right? You have this idea for a book, right? That's where it all starts. This right brain creativity, creative idea. And so what I found is that the best thing for me to be productive and effective and efficient is to, every time I have an idea, capture the idea, write that down. So I've got an Evernote file and I've got notebooks with me constantly. So if I ever get a book idea, I write that down, right? If I ever get an idea for a blog article or whatever, whenever I get ideas, I write them down. And I store those ideas and I organize them. And so that way I have this list of, let's say, like 50 different book ideas. And then once I have that list of ideas, then I'm going to go through those ideas and start shifting that left brain analytical thinking and thinking of, okay, of all these 50 different ideas, which ones are the most promising? Which ones I'm most excited about? Which ones am I most passionate about? Which ones might be most profitable? And so I started to ask myself these series of questions to go through and sift through these ideas to see which ones might be the best. And then let's say I've got 3 different ideas, right? 3 ideas I'm equally excited about, I'm equally passionate about. So then I'm going to go and do market research. So I can go to Amazon, I can find the best-selling books that are related to the books I'm planning to write, and I can start to see where the gaps are in the marketplace. I can read all the reviews, the positive reviews and negative reviews of the top books out there to find out what readers love and what readers hate about these books. And I can start to see where the gaps are in the marketplace. And then that usually gives me a crystal clear idea of, okay, which of these books is going to be the most profitable, the most unique, the most valuable for the market. And then once I have that, then I'm ready to write the book, right? So then I've started the same process over again. So I start with the creativity, which is, okay, if this is what my book is about, what has to be in the book? So what ideas have to be in the book? What concepts does the reader need to understand? What problems is the reader going to have as they try to go through this process? What are the solutions to those problems they might have? So that's what I found as the process, is constantly switching between coming up with lots of ideas and then analyzing the ideas to see where's the good fit and how do you organize them in the best way. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great recommendation for market research. I think for anybody who's interested in writing anything. And I realize this may be a very daunting question for you given your line of work. But in addition to The Tethered Soul, is there a book or quote that has particularly changed the direction of your life?
I mean, there are so many. I have read, on average, about 5 books a week for over 10 years now.
Holy cow.
I love reading. I love learning. It's my passion, and I love teaching. What I would say, one of the best things I've learned about books is that it's always better to read something you can immediately implement, because you're going to learn it and you're going to remember it way better. let's say you've got 50 books on your bookshelf right now and, 10 different courses or seminars or whatever that you're studying or that you could study. I think the most important thing isn't which book you have, it's which book are you going to implement. So here's a great story to illustrate this point. So, years ago, about 8 years ago, I think I read a book on real estate investing. It was written in like 1980s. It's a really old book on real estate investing. And I thought it was a great book at the time. And I kind of dabbled in it. I looked at a few deals, but I never invested in anything. I never started in the real estate investing business. And then a couple years later, I went to the seminar and I met a guy who was speaking on stage, and he had earned over $100 million in real estate investing. And when he started, he was 19 years old and just fresh out of jail. He'd been in jail for a couple of years. He had no education. He was broke, but he read this book. It was the same book I read. And he immediately applied it, and he became very, very wealthy in a short period of time investing in real estate. And the only difference is we both read the same book, right? And every metric of life, I was more successful than this guy. I had more money, I had more education, I had more supportive relationships around me, I had a better environment, but I didn't apply what I learned. And he got incredibly wealthy, and I didn't, from the same exact book. So I don't think it's about what you read or the information that you have necessarily. I think, obviously there's some bad stuff you probably shouldn't be reading, but, assuming you're reading books on how to write or how to publish or how to start a business or how to have good relationships, like whatever area of life you want to improve, there's a lot of good ways to do things. Like there's no one right way to do it. And so I think the most important thing is that when you're reading, when you're studying, is that you study what's most applicable to your life right now. So that's what I would say, because I spent a lot of time reading books on things like real estate investing that I never really implemented. I never really took action on. And those books didn't help me. And probably helped me in other ways, like unconsciously I learned new concepts and ideas from them. But I know the books that have been most impactful in my life are the ones where when I read them, I immediately started using the information in them. And so that's what I would say is take a look at the resources you have available right now, and which of those, if you studied them, would make a dramatic improvement in your life, and go study that. Right. And and again, I think it goes back to that awareness concept of being aware of what you need in your life right now, where the problems are, and what books out there might help you be able to solve those problems, and then study those and implement them right away. As soon as you learn the ideas, implement them. Otherwise, it's not going to make a difference in your life.
That's such a great perspective, I think, on being really deliberate about what you're consuming and the ways that it can help you and empower you.
Definitely. I think a lot of people want to know, what do I do? What is the book I read? What is the step I take? What is the action I should do? And I think the more important question is, how are you going to do what you're doing? Right? What is the best way of reading books? What is the best way of starting a business? And it's not the way, I'm not saying is like the step by step. I'm saying it's the way in which you operate, the way in which you think about what you're doing, the way in which you act on it every day. You can take a look at any business in the world. Take a look at waste disposal, right? Getting rid of trash. There's hundreds of entrepreneurs who went in that business and went broke, failed miserably. And then there's a couple of people in that business who became multimillionaires and billionaires, right? And it's the same in every business anywhere in the world. So in any business, there's opportunities to be successful or to fail. And it's not about what business you're in or what strategy you're using. It's about how you do what you do that's going to make the difference.
Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Would you share with our audience where they can find out more about you and your work online?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're excited about, getting your first book written and published and launched on Amazon, I've got a free video training course for you that will walk you through the whole process at ebookpublishingschool.com. And then you can also check out the publishing company's site at tckpublishing.com. We've got tons of awesome articles, resources, and checklists on everything from writing to publishing to marketing your books. And if you want us to consider publishing your books, you can check out our submission guidelines there. And then the last thing I have is the podcast show. So every single week we interview a best-selling author to find out what's working right now in their business to grow their income and increase their earnings. And that's at publishingprofitspodcast.com.
Those are all incredibly generous offerings. Thank you for sharing them, Tom.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Coaching Services. We help you find clarity and confidence so you can take action toward living your dream life. To learn more about one-on-one personalized support from someone who believes you have a path to fulfillment and wants to help you uncover it, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/coaching. Hello and welcome to the after show for our interview with Tom Corson-Knowles. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year. 2017 is upon us, friends.
And may it be a less bizarre one than 2016. Am I right?
That's true. Cosign.
So we're here January 3rd, 2017, and we have some big things coming for Motivational Millennial. This will be going into our second year of doing the podcast and working with millennials to help you and help us, help ourselves. No, help all millennials. I know when you say, I have to say them when I'm talking about millennials, but also it's us because it just seems weird to say we're helping us. So you have to say them, even though we're also right. Millennials. It's kind of a weird, trippy thing.
It's the inclusive they. Yes, that's
It's right. The inclusive they. We've been helping them to really find their path and understand a little bit more about what they're wanting out of life. And also, hopefully, having the opportunity to see from the example of others that the path is not going to be easy. I was going to say the path isn't always easy, but I think the reality is that there are definitely going to be challenges on the path. But what we have seen over and over again is that, number one, it's worth it. And number two, you'll get through it. And one of the things that we have really come to appreciate about this path is how much transformation and change around your identity and what you're capable of and all of that occurs on your path to achieving your dreams and finding success and finding fulfillment. And that's what we want to really be supporting you all in moving forward.
That's true. We've really seen that more than anything, change is the hardest thing in people's lives, either because they're trying to change and they're finding it really hard, or change has been foisted upon them and they are working on how to deal with it. And Ivy, in her own life, I know has a significant amount of change and transformation. And I have too, I would say, especially coming out of academia to a totally different path. And we've seen so many people successfully transform their lives that it's given us real conviction that it's possible no matter what your background, no matter what your circumstances or your challenges. And it doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way you might hope or might think it will, but it's definitely possible to start taking steps in that direction that open up new possibilities and really give us hope. I think that's the bottom line. Things don't have to stay the way they are. Or if they're changing on you, that doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing.
Well, and this is exactly why we wanted to use the amazing interview with Tom for our first 2017 episode, because what he talks about in the show is how he is less attached to the exact outcome or goal and more interested in the growth and change and transformation that he is going to experience along the way. So even though he didn't reach his goal of $10,000 a month for 6 years, that didn't get him down, because what he was focusing on and what he was really grateful for is how much he was changing and growing, and that his identity and what he saw himself as capable of doing changed throughout that time as well. And I think that's something that is becoming really clear as we're doing this work, as we're hearing people's stories. I know for myself personally, as I have been diving deep into coactive coaching and the emphasis on the experience and the internal change that occurs as you move forward toward achieving whatever goals that you have set for yourself. I mean, that's the thing that will always occur. People are achieving their dreams and it's going to look differently. It's going to be, I created this amazing business, or I wrote a bunch of books, or I have a ton of albums, and that's really amazing. But what has occurred for everyone is some kind of shift in what they believe they were capable of achieving.
And often it begins with them starting something
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Tom was highlighting. He just said the biggest place people get stuck is the beginning. It's writing those first words. And I think this is a hard thing in my life. I know too. I've been working on this album, which hopefully by the time the podcast airs is significantly closer to completion, if not already complete.
Hopefully done, yay!
Yeah, but I did get back in the studio this past weekend and really spent a lot of time on it, and I had the realization that I could have sat down and started working on a track at any point over the prior month in those 30-minute time slots when I was between tasks or just doing something that wasn't that important, but the mental block around starting it was so high because I think I was putting so much pressure on myself about what it meant. And I suspect for a lot of people who are thinking about writing a book, that's what the thing is. It's like, well, if I'm going to write a book, then, I have to come up with an outline. Or if I'm going to try to pitch it to a publisher, I have to put together a book proposal. And then I'm going to have to think about a cover and a title and who's going to review it. And what if they don't like it? And then what if people leave me bad reviews on Amazon? And then what if everyone hates me?
And it's a never-ending spiral that keeps going and going.
Exactly.
Yeah, unless we have practices in place or people in our lives to support us, to help us sort of, one, identify when those spirals are happening, but two, break that spiral a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why it is so important for yourself or for other people in your life who are starting some creative endeavor. I mean, look, if it's a Ponzi scheme, yes, please intervene. But otherwise, if someone's starting something creative, encourage them, even if you think it's a terrible idea or it has no way of working, because you're not encouraging this specific iteration of this specific thing. You're encouraging their creative journey as a human, and they might need to get this one bad idea or project out, or maybe 10 or maybe 100 bad ideas and projects out of the way. But if every time they do it, they're going to get better. And who knows, the first one could be the blockbuster winner song or whatever. But so often I think we try to save people from themselves and think, oh, I don't want you to be hurt or embarrassed or disappointed in yourself or let down when what you're trying to do doesn't work. And I think that comes from a really noble place, but that's how people's dreams get crushed in their infancy, because you tell someone that when they're at the beginning of a creative project, that might be all the feedback they need to believe the negative stories they're already telling themselves about how they're not going to win. Because
the reality is that it's already a challenge to get started, even if you have everyone encouraging you. Mm-hmm. It's already a challenge internally to start, but it's going to be so much easier to overcome that and to move forward if people in your life are encouraging you. And the thing that's going to happen is that it's not just about, to your point, it's not just going to be about that one project, but what's going to happen is that in your mind, with these people encouraging you, and when you take that step, and I've said this, I think, a few times already in this after show, but what you think is possible for yourself and what you think you are capable of doing will shift, which is why making tiny changes, like I am going to walk for 30 minutes one time a week. And you do that, it can be such a huge catalyst for change, because what's shifting isn't just the habit you're creating, but what's shifting is your identity around what you're capable of doing.
And what I really appreciate that Tom and people like him, like John Lee Dumas in the podcasting space, for example, what I really appreciate about what they're doing is making those changes really easy and step-by-step for people. So here's a structure you can do to publish your first ebook. And they're very generous in giving away so much of that information through the videos and everything. Tom certainly, with his training for authors. And that guidance and structure can be so helpful, because we don't know what we don't know when we're starting a new thing. We didn't know when we were starting this podcast what it would be like or what we would learn, but because we did John Lee Dumas's free podcasting course and then eventually joined his community, Podcaster's Paradise, we learned so much to just give us a base to set up for success. And so if you are considering a change in your life, I also want to say you don't have to do it alone. Like, look for these resources out there, the structures.
Yes, absolutely. And this is exactly what we're trying to be for you all. So in the coming months, you will see us talking a little bit more. I mean, you may have noticed already a change in the questions on the podcast, shifting a little bit more to get in depth about what the journey of each of our interviewees has been like, what it's been like for them to change and transform and overcome several internal and external challenges to make that happen. So please reach out to us and let us know, how can we support you? You know, we already are developing products like coaching, for example. The podcast will, of course, continue considering doing workshops, and we have big visions in our mind about doing retreats in the future as well. But really let us know, how can we support you in creating what you want out of life and overcoming both the internal and external struggles that will inevitably pop up on your path.
Yeah, and if there are significant changes that you're trying to make that you're feeling stuck on, definitely let us know what those are too. One of the things that we're putting together is an ebook to set the stage for some mindsets that tend to hold us back as millennials and tools that we can use to help overcome them. And while that's a good foundation, we want to know specifically what are your changes that you're wanting to make, in what areas, what has worked, what hasn't worked for you so far. And we want to be there to support you through those changes, because we know how hard it can be to feel like you're all alone in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So really the bottom line is, it's 2017. It's a new year. We have big ideas and hopefully big things that we are going to bring to you. Please consider yourselves partners in that and just let us know how we can support you. And also, we hope that 2017 is a big year for you. What are your New Year's resolutions, for lack of a better phrase? Sometimes I think that gets overused, but really, how are you going to live intentionally throughout the year? And what are the steps that you want to take to start creating intentional change and transformation in your life?
And with that, we say, welcome to the future, and we'll catch you next week.
Woo!
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!